Something's happening to you that you can't explain to anyone. Your favorite song comes on, and you feel nothing. Your friends text asking to hang out, and the thought exhausts you. The goals you wrote down 6 months ago sit in your journal like someone else's handwriting. You're moving through your days like you're underwater, everything muted, distant, requiring effort that shouldn't be necessary just to exist. And the worst part isn't the emptiness. It's the confusion because nothing actually went wrong. No tragedy struck. No one betrayed you. Your life looks exactly the same from the outside, but inside feels like someone dimmed all the lights, and you can't find the switch. And you're terrified because you don't know if this is depression, burnout, or if this flatness, this complete absence of excitement about anything, is just who you are now. But what if I told you that what's happening to you isn't an ending? What if this numbness, this disinterest, this feeling like you're a ghost in your own life, what if that's not you breaking down? What if it's the most important thing that's ever happened to you? Because here's what nobody tells you about transformation. It doesn't announce itself with epiphanies. It doesn't arrive with clarity and motivation and a clear path forward. It starts with a death, a slow, uncomfortable dying of the version of you that can't hold what you're becoming. And that death, it feels exactly like this. Like nothing matters. Like nothing moves you. Like you've lost the ability to care. But you haven't lost anything. You're shedding. Let me tell you about snakes. When a snake outgrows its skin, it doesn't just peel it off and move on. The days before the molt are brutal. Its eyes cloud over, and it can't see clearly. It becomes irritable, withdrawn. It stops eating because nothing appeals to it. It hides because being seen feels vulnerable. And if you saw a snake in that state, you might think it was dying. But it's not dying. It's preparing. Its body is creating a new layer of skin underneath the old one. And until that new skin is ready, until the old one has fully separated, the snake exists in this in-between state where nothing works quite right, where everything that used to be automatic now feels forced. That's where you are. You're not broken, you're molting, and everything you're experiencing, the numbness, the disinterest, the feeling like you can't access who you used to be, that's not the problem. That's the process. Let me tell you what's really happening. For years, maybe your entire life, you've been running on a frequency that wasn't yours. You took on other people's dreams and called them your own. You maintained relationships out of obligation and called it loyalty. You pursued achievements because they looked good on paper and called it ambition. And your system, your mind, your body, your energy, they went along with it. Because that's what systems do. They adapt. They compensate. They find a way to function even when the fuel they're running on is synthetic. But here's what happens with synthetic fuel. Eventually, the engine rejects it. Not because there's something wrong with the engine, but because it was never designed to run on what you've been giving it. And when that rejection happens, it doesn't come with an explanation. It comes with emptiness, with disconnection, with a complete loss of interest in everything that used to keep you moving. Your soul isn't depressed. Your soul is revolting. It's staging a quiet coup against every borrowed dream, every performance, every version of you that was built to please people who were never going to be satisfied anyway. And that revolution doesn't feel empowering. It feels like loss, like grief, like you're watching yourself disappear, and you don't know who's going to be left when the dissolving is done. But here's what you're not seeing. You're not disappearing. You're emerging. The old skin hasn't fallen off yet, so you can't see the new one forming underneath. But it's there. Stronger, truer, closer to who you actually are than anything you've ever worn before. And it's taking up space, pushing against everything that no longer fits, creating this unbearable pressure that makes you want to crawl out of your own life. But you can't crawl out. You have to shed out. And shedding requires you to stay still long enough for the old layer to separate. That's why nothing excites you right now. Not because you've lost the capacity for excitement, but because your system is refusing to waste energy on things that aren't real. Think about it. The relationships that suddenly feel exhausting, those are the ones where you've been performing instead of being yourself. The goals that suddenly feel empty, Those are the ones you adopted because they looked impressive, not because they lit you up. The activities that used to distract you, but now feel pointless. Those are the numbing mechanisms you use to avoid feeling what you're being forced to feel now. Your soul is running diagnostics, deleting corrupted files, clearing out everything that was taking up space, but serving no real purpose. And that clearing process feels like emptiness, because you don't have context for space that hasn't been filled yet. You've been so used to being full of noise, full of obligation, full of other people's opinions about who you should be. That emptiness feels like the absence of life instead of the presence of possibility. And I know what you're doing right now. You're trying to figure out how to fix this, how to get back to normal, how to reignite the passion or the drive or the version of yourself that used to care about things. And every video you watch, every article you read, every piece of advice that tells you to just choose happiness or find your purpose or start a gratitude practice, it bounces off you like rain off glass. Not because the advice is wrong, but because you're in a phase where advice doesn't work, where trying doesn't work, where force of any kind just makes it worse. This isn't a problem you solve. It's a process you survive. And survival right now looks like surrender. Surrender to the not knowing. Surrender to the flatness. Surrender to the reality that you can't think your way out of a transformation that's happening at the cellular level. Here's what's actually happening in your nervous system. For years, you've been in a state of hypervigilance, scanning for threats, monitoring for approval, calculating every interaction to make sure you were doing it right, being enough, not disappointing anyone. Your nervous system has been running a program designed for survival, not for living. And that program is exhausting. It requires constant input, constant validation, constant proof that you're okay. So your system, in its wisdom, decided to shut that program down. It stopped responding to external validation. It stopped giving you hits of dopamine for things that weren't genuinely nourishing. It stopped lighting you up for performances that were draining you. Not because something's broken, but because it's trying to teach you a new way. A way where you don't need constant stimulation to feel alive. Where you don't need other people's approval to feel worthy. Where you can exist in stillness and not interpret it as death. But your mind hasn't caught up to what your body's doing. So your mind interprets the stillness as depression, the lack of external validation as failure, the absence of excitement as proof that you're broken, and it panics. It tries to force you back into the old patterns because the old patterns feel safer than this unknown territory. But forcing doesn't work anymore. The old skin is too tight. You've outgrown it. And every time you try to squeeze back into who you used to be, it hurts more because you're not meant to go back. You're meant to break through. So what do you actually do? How do you navigate this phase when everything feels pointless and you can't even remember what you wanted anymore? You stop fighting it. You stop trying to logic yourself out of it. You stop comparing yourself to the version of you that had energy and clarity 6 months ago, because that version was running on fumes, chasing things that didn't matter, operating from a frequency that was killing them slowly, and your system knew it. Your body knew it. Your soul knew it. They just couldn't get your attention any other way. So they took away the noise. They removed the distractions. They created this void so you'd finally have no choice but to listen. And what they're trying to tell you is this: what you want isn't out there. It's not in the next achievement or the next relationship or the next version of yourself you're trying to become. What you want is the freedom to stop performing, the permission to be undefined, the space to discover what lights you up when you're not trying to impress anyone, not even yourself. And here's how you'll know you're moving through it instead of staying stuck in it. You'll start noticing small shifts. You'll stop forcing conversations that drain you. You'll start saying no without the guilt spiral. You'll feel less attached to outcomes and more curious about process. You'll crave solitude not as an escape, but as a return. You'll stop performing your life on social media and start living it in private. You'll feel still, not in a dead way, but in a rooted way, like you're finally standing on ground that's solid instead of chasing horizons that keep moving. And that stillness isn't emptiness. That's clarity. That's your real self starting to breathe after years of being buried under who you thought you had to be. The truth is, You won't go back to who you were. And that's not tragic. That's the point. The old excitement was built on external validation and borrowed dreams. What's coming is different. It won't be loud or frantic or desperate. It'll be quiet, steady, sure. The kind of aliveness that doesn't need to prove itself. The kind of passion that doesn't burn out because it's not being forced. And when it arrives, when you finally step into that frequency, you'll understand why nothing could excite you before. Because you weren't available. You were too busy performing, too busy pleasing, too busy being who everyone else needed you to be. But now you're creating space. And space is where new life grows. So if you're in this phase right now, if nothing excites you and everything feels flat and you're terrified this is permanent, I need you to hear something. This isn't the end. This is the beginning. You're not losing yourself. You're finding yourself for the first time, without the noise, without the masks, without the borrowed energy that was never yours to run on. And yes, it's uncomfortable. Yes, it's confusing. Yes, it feels like dying. But on the other side of this molt is a version of you that doesn't need permission to exist, that doesn't shrink to fit into spaces too small for your spirit, that knows what they want because they've finally gotten quiet enough to hear their own voice. Now, if this is landing, if you're feeling seen in a way that's almost uncomfortable, I want you to do something. Go to the comments and type 4 words. I'm in the molt. That's it. No explanation. Just those 4 words. Because naming where you are removes some of its power. You're not alone in this strange, uncomfortable space. There's a whole community of people shedding their old skin and trusting that what's underneath is stronger. And if you know someone feeling the same flatness, the same disconnection, share this with them. Ask them to write it too. I'm in the molt. Because sometimes we need permission to stop forcing life and start trusting the process that's already happening. Subscribe if you want to stay connected to this work. And if supporting through super thanks feels right, it directly fuels more content like this. But real talk, the fact that you're here, watching, listening, I don't take that for granted. Thank you. The truth is, this phase is temporary. It only feels permanent because you're in it. But one day soon, you'll wake up and something will feel different. Not everything, just something. A song will hit different. A conversation will land. An idea will spark curiosity you forgot you had, and you won't feel that desperate manic energy you used to call motivation. You'll feel calm, aligned, like you're finally moving with yourself instead of against yourself. And you'll realize the emptiness wasn't taking anything from you. It was making room for the real you, the one who doesn't perform, the one who doesn't chase, the one who knows their worth without needing the world to confirm it. That version is forming right now, in the quiet, in the void, in the molt you're so afraid of. So stop running from it. Let it happen. Let yourself shed. Because the new skin waiting underneath, it's worth every uncomfortable moment of not knowing who you are right now. The molt has begun, and you're going to be unrecognizable in the best possible way.